Let's talk about the story that Eunice Yoon first brought to us yesterday here on Squawk Box. That was talking about the Chinese reaction to the new cases that they've had there. The Chinese reaction was to say, hey, this is a European strain, which I don't understand. Can you identify something and say that it's been imported back into China from Europe, first of all? And then second of all, they were saying it may be because of imported salmon, either in the salmon itself or on the packaging. Does any of that make sense to you?
Well, it's possible that based on the sequencing, they could understand where this came from, looking at the patterns of the different sequence strains across the world. And it wouldn't surprise me that the virus came back to them. That's what's going to happen. This virus is going to continue to circulate around the globe. Now, the idea that it hitched a ride on fish is highly implausible. I mean, it's absurd. I don't think that this virus hitched a ride on fish. And if you remember back in Wuhan, they also traced that virus back to a fish market originally, or market, but they traced it specifically back to the fish section of that market. It probably calls into question their fish handling practices in these markets more than it does the possibility that this virus is being carried in and out of that country on fish. They probably don't have good practices in these markets, and you have an infected vendor in the market spreading it to people who are purchasing some of the products in that market. I can't see any plausible scenario where this virus rode in on salmon.
Yeah, it seems crazy. However, there is already a bit of a blowback with Chinese consumers who are saying they don't want to eat any of this stuff. There have been, questions about what this means for trade going back and forth. You're somebody who follows the markets pretty closely and free trade too. What could this potentially mean when you see a government start pointing fingers like that? And do you think it would happen in other countries around the world?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we dealt with some of these issues when I was at FDA, where you saw consumers react very quickly to these kinds of concerns, where you were concerned about a specific meat product or product of produce being contaminated coming in from another country. So it's possible that Chinese consumers pull back from U.S. imported food across the board, meats and poultry and fish, based on these kinds of issues being raised by the Chinese government. I don't know why the Chinese government this early in their investigation would point to salmon simply because they found it on a cutting board in a market, especially after finding it on the cutting boards in the Wuhan market and knowing that they probably have a problem with how these products are being handled in these markets. There's really no way to postulate that this came in on fish. It wouldn't infect the fish. The virus wouldn't live long enough on the surface of a product like that coming in. So it's hard to imagine how this would have come in on U.S. salmon.